Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker. And today, we celebrate the birthday of, as much as I hate to say it, but most likely America's last great filmmaker. I know that there are guys like Paul Thomas Anderson, and he's more in the generation of Quentin Tarantino, but I don't really see any great filmmaker today that is in his 20s or 30s or even 40s, really, like a Tarantino or a PTA or some of the greats that have come by. Certainly not on the level of Scorsese, De Palma, or Coppola, Oliver Stone, people like that. I don't think we'll ever see that again. But Quentin Tarantino has almost a near perfect portfolio of great films. His last one was just incredibly great, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. When you walked into the movie theater to see that movie, you didn't walk into a movie theater, you walked into a time machine, because Tarantino was so detailed with the language, with the atmosphere, with the scenery, that you walked into a time machine back into 1969 California or Hollywood, Los Angeles. He did the same thing with Inglourious Basterds. He did the same thing with Jackie Brown and Reservoir Dogs. He did the same thing with The Hateful Eight, and of course Django Unchained. Pulp Fiction took you into the world of gangsters. Kill Bill took you into the world of assassins. Reservoir Dogs took you into the world of crime thieves, of diamond thieves. Only great auteurs, people who can write a world that is so perfect, can make that experience happen. Today, we don't really see that. We we watch a movie and it's like popcorn. It smells good, it tastes good, you put it in your mouth, it melts in your mouth, and that's it. It goes away. It leaves you unfulfilled. But Tarantino, and that's what Steven Spielberg films are like. Not to shit on Spielberg, but his movies just don't hold. They don't have a lasting impression on you. Tarantino films stay with you. There are moments in those movies that people remember forever when they see it. There's dialogue in those films that people memorize and quote all the time. The way people dressed, Uma Thurman, the way she looked in Pulp Fiction, Brad Pitt and DiCaprio, how the chemistry was perfect in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The perfect casting in Reservoir Dogs. That whole group was just perfect. And the only film that you would say was a clunker, and almost every film director has a clunker, except for probably Kurosawa and Fellini and De Secca and Rossellini, and maybe even Ingmar Bergman, was the movie Death Proof, even though Death Proof was saved by the greatest chase scene in film history, followed by, of course, Bullet and The French Connection. Tarantino, of course, wrote some of the most evil characters in movie history. Christoph Waltz was brilliant in Inglourious Basterds, a perfectly written character who was not evil, like, just a bad guy. He was charming. He was sophisticated. He was debonair. But he was evil to the core. Leonardo DiCaprio's brilliant performance in Django Unchained as Calvin Candy. Again, a man of culture, a man of immense wealth, but a man that had this evil, this seething evil in him that blinded him from everything. The Kill Bill films were this incredible time machine of taking us back to the 1960s and 70s of those great kung fu movies. And Tarantino would write great characters for big stars. You know, when you watch a Tarantino film, you see all these different actors in there in cameo roles. Al Pacino, De Niro, Harvey Keitel. You know, you see all these guys in these movies, and you're like, wow, you never thought you'd see them in that type of movie with that type of character, and they pull it off brilliantly because of the craftsmanship that Tarantino has. He is just an absolute god of cinema. And he became that god of cinema because he didn't go to film school. He didn't learn the cookie cutter way of making film like they have today, which is why all these movies are so terrible and boring. He went to film, and he said that. That's a quote of his. I didn't go to film school. I went to films. He watched everything and everything. And more than anything, he watched foreign films. Foreign films in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and even in the early part of the 80s were so different than American cinema because they had deep emotional connection. When you saw a film like Once Upon a Time in the West, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, Amarcord by Fellini, Ran by Kurosawa, when you saw those films, there was a rich layers of emotions, of depth in there that American films just don't have. Again, there are examples of American films that I can give you, like The Godfather, like Raging Bull, like Taxi Driver, like the Tarantino films we just talked about, that do have that layer, but they're few and far between them. You're not going to get an emotional connection in a Steven Spielberg film or in a Brett Ratner film or in some film, some superhero film. You're just not going to get that because it's all about bing, boom, action, episodic. Let's go to the next scene. You know, in film, if you ever wrote a script and you ever spoke to an agent or any of the Hollywood gatekeepers, and the reason why the Hollywood films suck today is that they always look for episodic beats. There's got to be a beat here, a beat there, a beat there, a beat here. Tarantino films, they take their time. It's like going to dinner or a wedding and you have a 7-course meal. You know, you don't get all the food. It's not a smorgasbord or a buffet where you get all the food all at once. You take time. You're dining. Cinema is a dining experience, like the old way of opera. The reason why opera was so brilliant and so difficult to make was because you had to have great music, great lyrics, great story, and a lot of times great dance. And that's why the great opera composers, Verdi and Puccini and Wagner and those guys, they're the greatest creators, entertainers of all time, because nobody can do what they do today. Tarantino turned 63 today, born in Nashville, Tennessee, moved out to California and worked in a movie store. And he watched all these movies, lots of kung fu films, lots of war films, lots of European and Asian films. And he got his ideas and a lot of his shots from those films. And, you know, people always say, oh, Tarantino robs this and he steals from here and he steals this story. That's nonsense. Everybody steals. Walt Disney built the Disney empire by taking fairy tales from 500 years ago and turning them into cartoons. Good for him for doing it. Picasso always said, amateurs borrow, professionals steal. It's just the way it is. Try to find something that's 100% original. I dare you. And again, there are some I can name some. There's no film like Fellini, like 8.5, before or since. You couldn't make 8.5 today. You couldn't make La Dolce Vita today. You couldn't make La Strada today. Couldn't do it. The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Once Upon a Time in the West. You couldn't really make those films. But Leone did, with a few of those Man with No Name series, he did borrow and take from Kurosawa's Yojimbo, and the Seven Samurai, where the remake of that was The Magnificent Seven. So the greats always borrow and always take little pieces from each other. There's no harm in that. There's nothing wrong with that. We should appreciate that these guys recognize greatness and try to take that greatness and put a little of their special sauce on it and not criticize them for it. Here's an interview Tarantino did some years ago, unfortunately with Stephen Colbert, where he discusses the cinematic experience for your viewing pleasure.
TV's fun. It's good. It's I've carried memories that I've seen on television for most of my life. But when it comes to watching a movie, and I've seen many movies that have become some of my favorite movies, and the only way I've ever seen them is on television. You can go onto a whole thing. A lot of the classic movies I saw on late night television.
The Thing.
Yeah. Well, the original Thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, but it's also a disposable experience. There is an aspect about it being disposable. When a movie comes out that you're interested in enough to see, and it makes you leave your house and buy a ticket, and you could do anything in the world you want that night, but you decide to go to see a film, one film in particular, and you go to see it, and maybe you're on your own, maybe it's in the afternoon, or maybe it's with your date or your wife or whoever, and you go and see it, and you buy a ticket and you sit down and you have an experience, and you have an experience with a bunch of strangers. And at that moment, once the movie gets going, once the lights are down, you become a collective. This audience here is a collective. There's you by yourself. I'm talking to you. There's you by yourself, but then there's all of you together. And then you start appreciating the movie in that way. And when you have a good experience, it's not always a good experience, but when you have a good experience, those are the things that stay in your mind and that you remember for the rest of your life, and they become indelible snapshots.
And that's what it is. Movies are moments. Scorsese said that brilliantly. Movies are moments. It doesn't have to be, this linear thing that goes from beginning to end and all that. That's just, it's a cookie cutter. That's why all these movies today are so predictable. You kind of know at the 60th minute this is going to happen. You know at the 9th minute the inciting incident is going to happen. I mean, it's bad. And that's why Hollywood is dying today. Films are dying today. Because there's no risk taking. Now, we've seen this before. The 1960s, late 1960s, the Hollywood system was dying. And the 1970s, we had this renaissance of independent American filmmakers. De Palma, Scorsese, Coppola, Lucas, Friedkin, John Cassavetes, and so on. Then in the 80s, they went back to the corporate money-grabbing cookie-cutter system. And then in the 1990s, we had Quentin Tarantino come along and make these great independent films. The problem with Tarantino was, and I knew this because I was working for a small film studio at the time, was everybody saw Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, which were labeled independent films, and they all said, I can do that. I can write like Tarantino can. I can film like Tarantino. I'm cinematic like he is. And they try to copy Tarantino, but the problem is that you can't copy Tarantino because there's only one Tarantino. It's like trying to sing like Frank Sinatra. You sound stupid. And the first thing people are going to say is, well, that's a Tarantino film, or he's trying to sound like Sinatra. There was a great documentary about this guy named Troy something or other. It was called Overnight. And he made a movie called Boondock Saints, but he had the script, and Harvey Weinstein loved it. And if you ever watch the documentary, this kid just loses his mind with he just put all his he went crazy because a lot of people were giving him all of this praise that this film was going to be the next big film. And he loses his movie deal, and he loses a record deal that he had because he was in a stupid little band. And his career went nowhere. I mean, he ended up making the film. Of course, it wasn't even remotely close to anything like Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs. It was just an over-the-top shoot fest. But that I would recommend seeing both films, the documentary and the film, just so you could put it together. But you know, there were so many guys who tried to be like him, especially in the 1990s, and that's why that independent genre died a quick death, because there were only maybe 3 or 4 guys that came out of it that were worth it, but they were all different. That's the whole thing about being independent. You're different. There was the Tarantino style, there was the Paul Thomas Anderson style, there was the Linklater style, there was the Gus Van Sant style, there was the who was the name of the guy who made Desperado, Rodriguez's style. They were all different, and they all gave you an introduction into their cinematic world, and that was great. I mean, it's over now. Tarantino pretty much has said that he's not going to make many more movies after the next 1 or 2. I think he wants to make 10, which I think is silly. But anyway, it's him. He's probably got 200 million in the bank, so he's got his awards, he's got everything. He doesn't need to impress anybody anymore. He never looked at impressing people. But the Tarantino era, which is still going on, has been one of the great eras, and maybe the last great era of American cinema, unless there is some kid in Ohio somewhere that has a camera and a dream and great writing skills that can introduce us to great characters in a great world of their own, a great universe of their own. Writing your own universe is very difficult. Can it be done? Of course. Will it be done? So many of these people today want to get rich right away. We'll see. It's just like music. It's just like television. It's all a money grab today. There's no art. There's no, I want to be different. It's all cookie cutter. And that's why entertainment in America, something that America was great for, is now lagging seriously behind the rest of the world. Everybody has blown us away and blown past us in the entertainment world. We are now vulgar. We have gyrating asses on, and ignorant poetry that I'm not even called poetry for music. Movies are all the same. To think that a movie like Sinners, which was hot garbage, had 16 nominations. Just the fact that it had 16 nominations, it didn't win much, but it had 16 nominations, goes to show where we are in art. And as Cicero had said, and as many philosophers have said, especially the Stoics, when your art and your architecture, when that suffers, it's a sign of your society on the decline. And look where we are. We are on a decline. So as we say happy birthday to Tarantino, we're going to give you a little montage of his great films and his great moments of films for your viewing pleasure. Happy birthday, QT. Here we go. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And there you have it. Happy birthday to one of the greats, one of the absolute greats, Quentin Tarantino, 63 years young today. Hopefully there are a few more films along the way. And hopefully there's a 25 or 30-year-old Tarantino out there waiting to prove me wrong as we look into the abyss of the movie and music industry as we know it today. And there's my 2 cents. Thanks again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Remember, my friends, Satan is always busy. Be a man and have a backbone, because masculinity and common sense are worth standing up for. And just remember, if it ends in an ism, it's a mental disorder. Have a great week.